My name's Merinda Crowder, and originally I was born in a very small town called Buchan in northeast Gippsland in Australia, a township of about 100 people, no electricity. And I now live in Limestone, Tennessee, which is a little bit bigger city, township of 5,000. And it's just a beautiful, gorgeous environment. And so this is my first exhibition here, and we've just finished hanging it today, and the opening is on Friday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m, and you're all welcome. Where I'm from, being raised in this small town, if anyone's ever seen the movie The Man from Snowy River, that's the area that I was born and grew up in. And yes, it has a huge influence on my work. I think from the time I was very young, I was very much part of nature. There wasn't much else around us except for nature and the environment. And so I grew up with a close connection to it. And as I was growing and over the years, I realized a very important point is that we're not with nature, we actually are nature. We're not just in nature, we are nature. And that influences your understanding of how you integrate with your surroundings. And even though I've traveled all over the world and seen a lot of other places, always in the background has been the influence of nature and the understanding that I am part of it. And so that has integrated into what I do and how I express myself as an artist. We have this desire as humans to be surrounded by beauty. It's a very innate quality in humanity. And so through my art, that's like what I like to try and express, is the joy and the beauty, so that people can look upon it, they can feast their eyes, they can enjoy themselves, and it makes them reflect on who and what they are. Well, I'm an acrylic fluid artist, and a lot of people today know that as paint pouring. It's not necessarily what it is, but that is one aspect of it. It actually originally was called accidental painting, and it's a process that came by a Mexican artist. He was a muralist called Siqueiros, and David Siqueiros was an artist at the time of Diego Rivera, and they were actually compatriots. And he was just playing around, and he started sort of throwing paints on a piece of canvas, and he started watching how they mixed and how they rose and fell. And it was a process that fascinated him, and he went on to evolve it further. He called it accidental painting. And he went on to teach the process as well, and one of his very famous students was actually Jackson Pollock. So as an acrylic fluid artist, what I do is I pour the paint onto the canvas and I do manipulate it around. However, I do it in a very controlled fashion. So I take the paint, I pour it on. There's a certain amount of serendipity in that, but if you understand the background and the technicalities of paint and fluid density, which is a very big part of it, you have to learn how your paint density and etc., viscose and things like that interact, and how they interact on the canvas, and if you do this, what rises and what falls down, and how that will pour, how the paints will mix, what they will create. Should it be cells, as some people know them as. But I take that and then I pour in a very controlled fashion and create, rather than just abstracts, which you see here behind me. In my other work, you'll see I actually create landscapes and botanicals. So I combine the serendipity of acrylic fluid art or painting with the very controlled classical style of landscape painting. Growing up in a very small town of 100, and all it had was a little general grocery store, and there wasn't anything else in the town. But there was a natural beauty, and there were caves, and I grew up actually climbing all in and out of the caves. They were a tourist attraction. So you're seeing textures, you're seeing colour, you're seeing a lot of those things. That plays a heavy influence, as we talked about before. Didn't really become involved with art itself until I was an adult. That was a massive influence for me, was creating gardens and texture and colour and folding it all into itself. So from there, as I reached retirement, I decided that I did actually a couple of those wine and paint nights with some friends, and I thought, I'd like to do that. So I started playing around with, like everyone does, canvas and brushes, and was not doing very well. I found brushes very restrictive for me. And I saw a video online. I've not had any formal art background or teaching, but I saw a video online about paint pouring. And I thought, oh, that looks interesting. I'd like to give that a try. But as I was contemplating it, I thought, I'd really like to do a landscape that way. But I didn't know how you quite did it, so I just put the canvas down, I mixed some paints and started pouring, and came up with my first landscape. And from there, I just kept evolving. I do a lot of experimental work. I also did a lot of research on the background so I could understand the fluid dynamics aspect of acrylic painting or fluid acrylic painting. And that informed me a lot about how paint works in this environment. And it allowed me to take a larger control over my work on the canvas. So rather than it just being accidental painting, it became very complex, informed formation on my canvas. And then in May 2020, when things were dramatically different in society, was when I saw that video, and that's when I started actually with fluid acrylics, and I just kept working. Once I actually started fluid pouring and then started developing the techniques that I did, it becomes very addictive. And it's just this drive within me where I found when we were moving and we were in a temporary Airbnbs and doing all that, that I just missed it. It was something like a piece of me was just gone. It's an inner desire, and there's actually something that feels missing inside of me when I'm not actively painting. I'm always trying different things, different techniques. More recently, I was working on how do I break paint on the canvas when you're pouring, which gives a whole different effect to your work. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. We are so blessed here in this part of Tennessee. You wake up in the mornings and we've got the mountains and these incredible sunrises and gorgeous sunsets and cloud formations, and we're just surrounded by it, and that's always inspiring. So that's my biggest influence. This one, Amethyst Grandeur, was one of my first full landscape pours, and it was challenging to work out how to bring all the different components together to give that, yet that is a complete pour, there's no embellishments there. This one, again, was actually inspired by Colorado and the night skies. And again, it's a complete pour except for maybe just a little bit of the tree trunks here was just a piece of paint dragged up with, I think, a fingernail or a skewer probably. So that's a complete pour, and in this one there was some embellishment in using powders, opal powders actually in this, to give that celestial feel that you see in Colorado with your night skies. I'm very grateful again to the McKinney Center for its sponsorship of artists. There is something very special about Jonesboro and this whole area. I think Jules said it very well, it's like a vortex for creativity in this environment, and having the township of Jonesboro and the McKinney Center here to help support artists, both the oral artists and the writers and the painters, is very special, and I'm very grateful to everyone here and to Jonesboro for creating this and allowing us to be able to show our work and express ourselves.